When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Schinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. This is another episode of Delayed Replay. I'm your host, as always, Steven Schinder, and lately on this show, we've been going through a few video game movies, like we had Mortal Kombat and then Uncharted, and now on this one, going to be talking about the new Tomb Raider 2 that just came out. Now, on this season of Delayed Replay, season 2, there have been some new voices, but on this episode, if you've been listening since season 1, we have like a familiar voice on this season finally. It is Starrapter. How are you doing, my dude?
Hey, Steven, it's awesome, and it's really cool that you invited me back for a second season. I like the idea of having seasons for a podcast and this sort of thing. It just makes it feel more official, more prestigious. I don't know, but I had a lot of fun on season 1 with a couple of discussions, namely the Mulan episode. Well, when I tell people about, I always tell them about the guy with the basket, the one character that was just absurd with like using it as a shield and
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into Tomb Raider though. This is a movie that I really was looking forward to because I enjoyed the first one quite a bit.
Yeah. And I agree, like the whole season thing makes it feel more official for some reason. Like I pretty much just decided that each year, like 2020 is season 1, 2021 is season 2. I think my friends at Just Two Lads, the podcast, also decided that as well. And it's like, yeah, why not? Because it makes it feel more like a TV show somehow, like giving the podcast like some seasons. It's really weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's just
Yeah, because you could just go on and on with episode listing with numbers, right? Like, oh, episode
yeah.
300. But it's like, oh, this is, episode 5 of season 2. So I don't know if it makes it less daunting for people to get into the podcast if there's less
Right.
numbers. I'm not sure. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, have a podcast with like 500 episodes across several years, and that is season 1, and then they just randomly decide to do season 2 after those 500. That'd be kind of a comic book thing to do, I think.
Yeah, we got to reboot to number 1 so we get more listeners. There you go. People are more apt to jump in at number 1 than 503.
Well, I think the highest amount of episodes that I've had a guest on this show is like 5. Like my friends Andres and I think Greg have each been on 5, and so have you. So like this is the 6th episode you've been on. So for the
Really?
moment, you've like broken the record. But
Oh my
um,
gosh. I didn't even
yeah,
think about that. All the High Republic content we were talking about. That's right.
yeah, in celebration. But
Oh,
that record might last only for like a week or two, just heads up. So enjoy it while you can.
oh man, I gotta hold on to that with all of my being for just a couple more days.
Yeah.
That's so funny how fast time flies by and how many episodes really go by. But yeah, man, it's been a good celebration of your first year. A lot of our mutual friends, I was listening to like Zack and Ben and everybody have been on this, so It's always fun hearing other people as well when I listen to this.
Yeah, like it's cool having different voices on here, and it makes it a lot of fun. So I guess before diving into Tomb Raider 2 proper, we should go into our like what experiences we've had with the franchise prior to this movie. So would you like to go first?
Sure. So, Tomb Raider for me goes back all the way to the original Tomb Raider on the original PlayStation, and I just remember how darn annoyingly hard that game was. Lara Croft, at the time looked amazing, and now you look back and it's like 3 polygons on the character. You got the body, the legs, and basically the head with like 2 polygons for guns. It was like the most, but at the time it was like, oh my gosh, this looks incredible, you know. And I remember getting killed over and over by these 2 dogs. These 2 rabid dogs just come after me in some cityscape that was half sunken underwater or something like that. I don't know why I have such a vivid memory, probably because I was just, like throwing the controller against the wall. I must have been only like 7 or 8 years old when I was playing that. And it was over a friend's house. Like I don't even own the game. So I haven't been like a huge fan of the Tomb Raider series just because most of the time I haven't owned the PlayStation, which it was usually exclusive to the PlayStation. But up until recently, they've had the big trilogy, and they just announced actually that it's actually an HD trilogy that you can buy for like $20 on Xbox, all packaged together. You get, I think it started in 2013. You get Tomb Raider, then you get Rise of Tomb Raider and Shadow of Tomb Raider. So they have that Tomb Raider trilogy, which is regarded as one of the best like game trilogies in recent years. Granted, there aren't many game trilogies, but for what it does, it's a very good platformer with a lot of action, and it's really intense. I played the first game. I actually own the second game. Haven't gotten to it yet, but what I will say is the first game kind of reinvented itself, and this game was always created as the sort of, oh, what happens if there was an Indiana Jones game, but set in the modern era, but with a female character, and instead of a whip, you use guns. That's basically Tomb Raider for you. Those games have really cool exploration where you're going around in these tombs and solving these puzzles that would allow you to get past obstacles to get to whatever your objective is. But what I really appreciated in these latest Tomb Raider games is the focus on Lara Croft and her struggles to survive in these really hard to survive environments. I mean, the first game, you're on a boat and you're crashing into the land there, and it's a survivalist game. Like there's like certain talents and stuff you can take, but you do actually have to hunt animals, and the animals are very dangerous. It's pretty frightening at times, and you just see everything that Lara Croft goes through. I mean, she's going through a lot. Like this poor woman is just getting beat down to hell between the adversaries that are both humans and animals, but also the traps. Like she's getting scrapes and cuts, and it's really visceral. It's a really not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that much, because there is some really gruesome stuff in those games, but it really just shows you how strong of a female character she is, which I think doesn't really in the video game space get enough light shined on. But other than that, I played that game, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, I really got to play Rise of the Tomb Raider. Already. It's been too long. It came out like 2015. But and we'll talk about this obviously. Is I watched the first movie that the reboot, Alyssa Vikander, because there was the other movies with Angelina Jolie, the Creator of Life or something like that, and I watched a little bit of that on TV, but I never sat through it. But what I will say is I enjoyed that rebooted Tomb Raider. I think it got all the energy right that I was just talking about with the game. You got this beaten down Lara Croft, and Vikander does a really good job of just showing you a different side of Lara Croft and still having all those tropes that you would see in the game. And I would say, you know, we talk about them here a lot on Delayed Replay, and it's like these video game movies, a lot of times they don't work. There's just something about like translating the game's mechanics and trying to take that story and trying to synthesize it into a different medium. Most of the time it just doesn't work. But I think Lara Croft and Tomb Raider works really well because, I mean, that's the thing. Tomb Raider was a game basically made to be like mimicking Indiana Jones. So yeah, you could just make an Indiana Jones movie, but set it in modern times and have a female lead, and it shouldn't be that difficult and that far-fetched for that type of concept to work. Of course, it wasn't an amazing movie, but I think it worked. I had a couple criticisms about it, but they were kind of your run-of-the-mill sort of criticisms. Nothing that was like super plot holy or anything like that. But yeah, those are pretty much my experiences with Lara Croft and with Tomb Raider as a franchise in its own.
Right. So I'll go into my thoughts on the movies in just a moment, but when it comes to the games, I've never played any of them, but I've long been aware of them. I was just like I was reading up on like the history of them, and apparently the reason why they went with a female protagonist was because they didn't want it to feel too much like Indiana Jones, and so that was an interesting way of sort of separating it. But of course, over time, like I guess once in a while you'd get that controversy with like the sex appeal angle, and I think I vaguely remember seeing an episode of Life with Derek where they kind of did an episode referencing it, except the video game in the show was called Babe Raider. So like really on the nose there. But I feel like over time they've made, like, just from what I've seen, they've made the Lara Croft character seem like less like that. Like they're relying less on the sex appeal angle, and I think that's also the case with well, like the movies have toned it down so that because with the Angelina Jolie movies, you can totally tell they're trying to insert fan service moments here and there, and to be fair, they do show like shirtless guys a couple of times, which I guess is fair. But yeah, those Jolie movies I didn't watch until like in preparation to watch these newer ones for the podcast. I vaguely remember seeing a clip of it while flipping through channels on TV in the early 2010s. I think it was the second one, Cradle of Life, because the first one from 2001 is called Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and the second one from 2003 is Lara Croft Tomb Raider Cradle of Life. So, really long title.
Really.
And those, they were just okay, I guess. Like I was kind of bored with parts of them. It was also really weird because the first movie begins with like this CGI robot that like Lara Croft is training against, and it's just bizarre to see that, and it never really gets used again. And then in Cradle of Life, you have like the effect that the Cradle of Life does. It like the effects for that, it seemed really weird at the time. It'd probably be easier to pull off now, but there are definitely some effects that hadn't caught up to like where they could look better now. But yeah, with the Alicia Vikander movie, which came out 3 years ago now, I enjoyed that more than the Angelina Jolie ones. It wasn't like the best thing ever, but I felt a bit more connected to her portrayal of the character, and they explore the father-daughter relationship more, I feel. And I mean, obviously spoilers for the first movie. I was genuinely surprised to see her father alive, because in the Angelina Jolie movies I was so used to him being dead that I like wasn't expecting that. And I guess that might be possibly be a thing with the reboot games. Like I've never played them, but I know that this one was like you said, more inspired by the 2013 game. So I was somewhat impressed with the movie for what it was. Like at best it might be like a 7 out of 10 for me, that first Vikander movie, but
That's
yeah.
actually gonna grade it. I think I graded the same, 7.5 or something like that. Yeah, there could be more to be desired, but overall I was like comparing it to the rest of the trash that we got for video because it was like, this is actually good.
Yeah, like it was definitely a step in the right direction. And one of the things that I noticed about that I really liked about it was the music. And I actually watched the movie post release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and like Junkie XL did the music for that Justice League cut, like Zack Snyder's version.
Mm.
And so when I was watching the first Vikander movie in preparation to see the sequel in the theater, I was really focusing on the music, and I was like, this sounds like something that Junkie XL would do, like just based on what I remembered from Justice League. And I like Google it, and lo and behold, like he did do the music for
What?
that movie. And
Wow. What a small world.
yeah, like I had seen movies where he'd done the music before, but I feel like Zack Snyder's Justice League was the first one where it really made a huge impression on me, and I really love the music. I've been re-listening to some of it every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't really heard his name mentioned a lot, obviously. John Williams, and you have the Paul Shores from, Lord of the Rings, and you got the
Howard Shore.
yeah, you got the Sylvester, what is his name? The one that does the Avengers, like
Oh,
Sylvester.
Alan Silvestri.
Yeah. So you got those big heavy hitters, but yeah, Junksy XL. I'm gonna be paying closer attention to the movies I watch to see if his name comes up, because I like you did as well. I watched the Snyder cut and was like, yeah, this is pretty exceptional music, a pretty exceptional score.
Yeah, like when I went back to rewatch clips from the theatrical cut of Justice League, Danny Elfman did the music for that. And like I love Danny Elfman, but sometimes his stuff sounds too much of the same depending on the movie. Like I've seen him do stuff for various superhero movies and for Tim Burton stuff as well. And like the only movie I can think of where he sounded really different was in Real Steel. It's where with the boxing robots. I really love that movie. And in yeah, and in that Justice League where he did the music, like it doesn't feel like at least in the final battle, it doesn't feel like the music has a presence in the forefront. It's kind of just background noise, whereas Junkie XL's music was pretty much in sync with the action. It's elevating everything that's going on. It feels more like a symbiotic relationship, and it works really well.
Yeah, definitely. Because that I'll be honest with you, the score is something I usually notice a lot more in my second viewing of things. Like that's what I like when I go see a Star Wars movie for the second time in a theater. I know the story, I know the plot. Now I can kind of sit back and absorb the music and see how it flows. So a lot of times that first viewing of something, I'll listen to bits and pieces, but most of my attention is obviously on the story at that point.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie by movie basis. Like there's some movies where I don't really pay attention to the music as much, but there are other movies where the music makes such an impression that I guess consciously or subconsciously try to key in on it a bit more as the events are unfolding. But yeah, you recently did like a Snyder Cut review on your YouTube channel, right?
Oh yeah, I did a review of that, because I also reviewed the 2017 version, which going back, I think I mean, there's a movie every once in a while where I'll be like, I gave that too high of a score.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I would have graded it like maybe 2 grades lower than that, but yeah, I did that, and I also did the as of recording this, or 2 days ago on Sunday, I had recorded a live stream of me, my buddy Milton, and Ben. We just did like a spoiler discussion for over 2 hours, just talking about that. So we were obviously all into the movie enough to talk about it for over 2 hours. So that's a lot of fun. You can watch that after the fact. This is all on my YouTube channel. Simply my name, Starrapter. There you go. Shameless plug.
Yeah, I think I was also a little bit too nice about the theatrical cut way back when, because Like I really didn't like Batman versus Superman. Like I don't like either version of it. But watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, like I was not like I had low expectations, but it really knocked it out of the park and really knocks the 2017 version down even
Oh,
further. So it's a quick turnaround in opinion for me.
yeah, I was watching you because I was watching your social media running up to the Snyder cut, and I'm like thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, it would be hilarious if this thing actually ends up like amazing, and all this stuff that people are saying, like that's like kind of like not like looking forward to it. I'm just like, oh, I'm totally turned around, and that happened with like everybody. It was like, oh, I was playing around with like making fun of it and never expected to actually enjoy it as much as I did. So I enjoyed social media over the weekend, just seeing everybody's reactions that are relatively positive for the most part.
Yeah, because the night that it dropped, like around midnight, I was like, "Oh, the Snyder Cut is on HBO Max now, or something." And then I posted a GIF of like a guy jumping in bed to sleep because I was just gonna go to sleep.
I like,
Um,
what about the Muppets or something?
oh yeah, there was a meme of like Justice League, but with the characters replaced by like the Muppets. And but like after I watched it, I shared that screen cap from Ice-T in the Rick and Morty episode Get Swifty when he's like, "I care now. You made me care more," and like I legit meant it. Like the Snyder Cut made me care about like the story, and I was like it was just wild. Like I did like a complete 180.
Yeah, it boggles my mind how the same movie can change so drastically by inserting scenes that were cut. We got this is going to be like one of the biggest things in history for Hollywood, I believe. Like for like having two completely separate things. One of them doesn't really work, and the other one works pretty much almost as flawlessly as some of the bigger comic book movies we've ever gotten from anywhere. You know, not just DC, but anywhere, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
to see that turnaround with the tone and with everything with the music being completely redone is just like, wow, that's gonna be one for the history books.
Yeah, for sure. And people are gonna like keep on talking about it. But I should probably get us back on Tomb Raider 2. Sorry for getting us on that tangent, but it's just like a huge thing that like felt like we kind of needed to touch on because movies. The first movie ends with like the tease of like it turns out that Anna Miller is, she works for Patna, which is like a part of the Croft, like I think it's like a subsidiary or something. I can't remember what the term is, but like Laura suspects that like she's actually part of that shady organization Trinity, and so like the movie ends with her like going to the pawn shop where Nick Frost is at. I can't remember his name. I just recognize him as Nick Frost. And like gets two pistols, and like that ending like got me pumped for this second movie, even though I was
Uh,
not like super familiar with this franchise.
yeah, because that is her iconic look, right? Like the whole
Yeah.
movie, she doesn't have them, so it's like, oh snap! Like you're actually gonna give her the iconic weapons, right? So that just shows you the potential. It's like, well, if she didn't have them the whole movie, what's the second movie gonna be like? She's gonna really be in her prime, like with those weapons, doing backflips, shooting people. Oh, it's gonna be fantastic. And it took long enough, but yeah, finally got it.
Yeah, like we saw like a lot of that action in this second movie, and is like it takes a bit for her to get used to it, but like by the end of the movie, she's like very proficient with them and is like shooting Trinity agents left and right, and it's just like so cool. Like you get some slow-mo action here and there, but I feel like it doesn't go on too long, and it really emphasizes like just how cool these action sequences are.
Yeah, that's the thing is the action sequences again harkening back to the video game where the video game has a lot of very cinematic moments where it just completely it takes you back for a second, like and it just does something that's just so epic, like doing backflips as like the ship's crashing into the water and just you're under the water, you're trying to get out, you're banging on a door as it's like not opening. It's like all the intensity just ratchets up and up and up. So again, it's nice to see that this property, everything synchronizes even from the games to the movie is capturing that tone.
Yeah, and in these types of games, the characters go to various locations, like the way that she like jumps around to them at different stages of the movie. Like it really does feel like you're watching someone play like an adventure, almost open world type of game.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I like the jet setting, going from location to location, just doing a lot of world building is always a good thing. When you have, especially like a franchise, you want to be able to see what the world is looking like, the characters involved, the backgrounds, and it just offers a lot fresher of a take, like seeing the different biomes from deserts to jungles to forests, and everything in between to show you just how much vast of a planet and her journey takes you on. It's just like that's more of a fulfilling journey when you can see how far she's come going to all these different locations.
Yeah, I will say though that when she finds this oasis in the desert, I did think at first that it was a mirage because it looked very green screen, but it turned out to be real. And so I had to do like a double take. And I was like, oh, this is a real oasis? Okay, like you could have made it look better, but I guess we'll just go with that.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing because it's like here we are in 2021, and it's like I thought that even the more budgeted effects that people can get their hands on, even at home, would look better than that. It's like I'm scratching my head, like these guys have millions of dollars in budget. Like what happened here, man? Like I know they're not working with ILM, like the masters of the business with like Marvel and Star Wars, those movie makers, but damn, like okay. But going back to the idea of the oasis in the desert, one of my favorite movies growing up was Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. He had a couple,
Oh yeah.
and I love those movies because I'm just a big fan of like Egyptian history, Roman history, all those ancient civilizations. So a lot of times you would have the pyramids, and there'd be like in that movie there'd be like the oasis out there in the desert, and it really gave me like it harkened back to those old times.
Yeah, those mummy movies, it's kind of weird because before, like Universal and Hammer each had like their own mummy series, and they were more horror, whereas the Brendan Fraser ones try to be like adventure type movies. Like they feel very much like Indiana Jones, and like they are fun. Like I do like the first one that he did is probably the best one. There are some things I do enjoy about the second one, and maybe the third one, but to a lesser extent. The CGI on The Rock as the Scorpion King in the second one is pretty terrifying now that I remember.
Oh my gosh, that was on the other night, dude. It came on TV, just on cable TV, and it was like, I don't remember this at all. Like it was, but yeah, it was not great. It was on
Yeah.
the background. I wasn't really watching it. It just happened to be on.
Yeah, and like there were also like those Scorpion King movies. Like The Rock was only in the first one, and I think there are like a few prequels that each go like back and forth. It's really weird. I haven't seen the Tom Cruise Mummy. Maybe I will someday. I just haven't been motivated, but
I did enjoy the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, and I was really disappointed when Universal announced that they weren't going to continue their monster franchise because I mean, yeah, it could have been better, but it wasn't like a terrible movie. I mean, the mummies were very fast moving and there was a lot of darkness, so it had a pretty good vibe to it. And it was just a while since I've seen any kind of mummy movie. So maybe my expectations, maybe I was looking through like, maybe my expectations were set like a little high. And it was just because I had not seen one in such a long time, but I would have liked to see it given another chance. But Yeah, I don't want to. That's a whole nother video for another day, another podcast for another day. See, I'm
Yeah,
so used to doing videos because I'm a video creator, and every once in a while I slip when I'm on podcasts mentioning video content, which is an audio content.
oh no, yeah. I once in a while someone on here will be like, watch us on this episode, and it's like, wait, it's audio, but yeah, so you're not alone.
Yeah, you're gonna just sit there and watch the thumbnail picture on your phone as the podcast is going, like just staring at the logo.
Oh man, that'd be really sad if, like, no offense to anyone if you do that, but that doesn't sound fun to me. Like, I don't know, build Legos while you listen or something. I don't know. But I will say that like the green screen in this in Tomb Raider 2, like at least it wasn't as bad as the dip between the first a couple Mortal Kombat movies from the 90s, where you can tell like the budget is significantly lower, like from the beginning of the second one.
Oh, you don't know how bad CGI is on an aging type of topic until the other day. I was watching Jumanji, the Robin Williams version.
Oh, is it the monkeys?
Yes, the monkeys. And you know what movie I instantly thought about, and I hope that Zach Arnold's listening to this.
Zombies.
Yes, I was like, the Zoobies monkeys were ripped from a 1995 movie or something because they look the same. It's like, that's how much data technology those poor guys are working with, is like literally like 25-year-old tech.
The Jumanji sequels are actually pretty good video game movies, and
They are.
yeah, like what's weird is the trend, well, from my perspective, seems to be that usually the best video game movies are the ones that are not based on specific video games, but rather have video games as part of the plot. Like, like Wreck-It Ralph, or I would argue Ready Player One as well. I really enjoyed that. And
Oh yeah.
the trend tends to be that adaptations of video games in movie form don't always live up to what people would want them to be. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the Super Mario Brothers movie, but that's like a classic example.
I have probably seen it, but I was so young that I don't actually remember, because I must have watched it when it like had just come out. Because it came out in the 90s, right?
Yeah, it came out in 93. Like, I also watched
Okay.
it when I was really young, like with my brother, and then I didn't rewatch it until recently, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty bad, but at least it's so bad it's good, so I can watch it with friends and we can have a good laugh.
I just remember something that sort of horrified me to a certain degree of the bad guys, the way they were designed, because I haven't seen this in so long.
Oh yeah, the Goombas with their like tiny heads but big bodies.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's what it was. It was like something from Beetlejuice or something. It freaked me out.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about having small heads on big bodies, but it just messes me up.
Yeah, they're definitely cursed. Like, yeah, like if you just Google images of these things, like they look pretty like weird. But yeah, like I also recently watched that movie Rampage, which I guess is based on an old video game and also has The Rock in it. And it had funny moments here and there, but I thought it was kind of forgettable. Like, I feel like some video game movies are kind of like that. I guess an exception would be that I really enjoyed the Warcraft movie from a few years ago, even though, yeah, like the only Warcraft thing I experienced beforehand was like I read the Duratan novel that's supposed to be like a prelude to it. But as far as like playing World of Warcraft, the only thing I'd ever done was like finding crabs and just walking around because I didn't know what to do, and I was like using my brother's friend's computer to play it, and there's that South Park Warcraft episode I really loved, but that was about it. But I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, it's such a shame. Forget the director of that movie. That he didn't get a chance because I know he had a vision for at least 3 movies, and I think it actually did pretty well overseas, like in China. I think it might.
Yeah.
Well, like here, I don't know. Nobody showed up, but they did good with the lore. They did really good with the lore, and they did the best they could for introducing so much complexity to like the mainstream. So I don't know. Yeah, getting back to Tomb Raider though, they're over the desert, and it's like that classic scene you'll see in most movies. And I think it actually was even in the Mummy that we were just talking about with Tom Cruise, where he like jumps out of the plane with the parachute or without a parachute or something like that. I remember in the trailer, but we have the same sort of thing that happens in this, and Lara Croft is like, oh, there's the destination because the whole time they're after this thing called the Orb of Eternal Energy, and it's that kind of trope that you get every character to go hunt this thing down, this certain object, and they're having to track all these breadcrumbs across different areas like Finland and China, and this is where they end up kind of like in the Middle East area there. She jumps out, and it's like the parachute, this whole thing, because then you got these enemies that are coming out, and then she's jumping out of there, and it's just like, oh crap, a bullet hits the parachute, so it's not looking good. It's not looking good, but she's able to just like kind of like cruise over to one of the other paratroopers, one of the bad guys there. Trinity are the bad guys.
Yeah, she was able to Tom Cruise over.
Yeah, so she basically takes that guy out and just like uses his body. It's just a way to get down. And this is like one of the things that happens like towards the beginning of the movie. So I was like, whoa, like we're opening with something like this. Like this is crazy. Because what's different about this movie is it's like a cold open, right? Like they just open up on this action sequence and you don't even know what's going on. Like, why is she after this orb? What's going on? But as we get further into the movie, we actually have like sort of like non-linear storytelling where eventually it goes back in time to where she's in England and she's like studying, and it brings you up to this point of why the heck these guys are after her, where they were, and all that good stuff. So what'd you think about that approach to storytelling? It reminds me of Breaking Bad, like, the classic freaking TV show that everybody should watch. Like they would always start with some crazy thing, and they're like, how do they get there? By the end of the episode, they're like, so that's how they get there. Do you enjoy that? I don't know if there's probably a specific filmmaking term for that kind of storytelling, I guess non-linear storytelling, but what'd you think of that approach?
Yeah, I do love Breaking Bad. Like it's probably the best written show I've ever seen. Like I love Breaking Bad to death, and that show handled the nonlinear storytelling really well, like from start to finish. I do think that it could be a case by case basis where like the execution could vary depending on how you do it, but if it's done well, I can get on board with it. It could also have to do with the genre, because with heist movies like the Oceans movies, which I marathoned recently, like, they do the thing where they talk about the plan and then it shows the heist. It keeps flashing back and forth, showing how they did it and whatnot. And it's like, I kind of don't care, but I guess it's because I'm not a huge heist movie fan. But in this instance, I thought it was done pretty decently. Like maybe like not Breaking Bad quality, but I did appreciate that these flashbacks gave us moments to breathe. So like we'd have exposition and take a break from the action. So and just seeing her like studying all these books about the orb of eternal energy, and you get these like really cool illustrations in those books, and it's like, wow, they actually got some really good like artists, or maybe they're interns or something, to like draw these things and make it look authentic. But you could kind of tell that on the pages, they were using, like, if you look really closely, they were using this text that people put in like books or newspapers and like TV shows or movies, where it's like the same thing repeated over and over again, and it's like not even real words, but like from far away it's supposed to look like words. And so that kind of annoyed me, but I'm like trying to look up what it's called. Lorem ipsum. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that was like, I'm probably the only one of the very few who noticed that in the books, so it kind of bugged me. But I did like that she was talking aloud to her peers and friends and whatnot about like what the orb of eternal energy does according to all these different scholars and legends and whatnot.
Yeah, it makes really good sense to have that kind of energy explained to. I mean, it's like the objects, right? It's like, what is this thing? And they go over a large amount of history of what is going on, and it just adds to a grander kind of perspective, because you want to have that kind of value. Why is this thing important? What are we going after this for? Is it just a relic I'm going to sell to somebody? Is it bad if it ends up in a villain's hands or the opposer or antagonist's hands? Why should we care as the viewer about this object? So it's nice that, like you mentioned, like there's that setup where like she's doing kind of the exposition, but in a smarter way, where she's actually doing it because she's explaining it to other people in the room. It's not like she's just talking to herself randomly. So you kind of felt like you're one of the people in the room with her.
Yeah, and I also appreciate that the orb in this movie is like it's a green orb, so it's a nice way to separate it from the likeness of the Cradle of Life in the older movies, where it's kind of orangish, kind of like a Dragon Ball, if I remember correctly. So I'm glad that they like differentiated the appearances of these different orbs, and we also get like a brief flashback of like people in ancient times like carrying the orb of eternal energy, and how it could like give an archer unlimited arrows or whatever. And it seems very far-fetched, and you're like not even sure whether or not to believe it until you see Laura use it later on.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool because, and it really harkens back to, I think, the earlier video games. She had unlimited ammunition in her guns and her different things, because it's just like, all right, this is not survival horror. You're not walking around like running out of ammunition. Although in the new games it kind of is, but in the old games it's like, all right, um, we're just using guns as a way to get from point A to point B. That's not the main thing of this game. The main thing of this game is to just go and explore these places and do a little platforming over some ledges and ropes and whatnot, and solve puzzles. So that was kind of, I had a little chuckle because I was like, oh, they are really playing homage to the classic games there.
Yeah, and knowing that the orb can give people unlimited ammo, it just like it's even more reason for her to keep it out of Trinity's hands, because like as we learn, like if it's ever in their hands, they'll be pretty much unstoppable in all their different operations. And it's like you definitely don't want the bad guys to have unlimited ammo.
Yeah, that could spell absolute doom. So yeah, getting to understand like what the crux of the story is. Of course, like we find that out, like, the whole sequence with the desert and the oasis. That's about 30 minutes before you're really getting about a good explanation of what exactly is going on. So it's nice because there's actually pretty good pacing in a movie like this, where it's like, all right, we get the in the face action for 30 minutes. We got you in your seat. You're not going anywhere. You're interested in the story. And now we're going to kind of slow things down a little bit as Laura kind of slowly tracks this thing through different areas. Like they go to different places on the map. I really did enjoy them going to like Scandinavia and Finland there, because I feel like that's a place that I don't see a lot of in various movies and TV that I watch. So it's neat getting that kind of wooded area that looks specific to the northern reaches of Europe there.
Yeah, because various people over the centuries have gone looking for this orb, so it makes sense that it'll have moved to different places, and people would like try to keep it secret, but word would get out because like things leak, people can't really be trusted, and so Lara is basically trying to follow all these leads, and so is Trinity, and like it's basically like a race to get to the MacGuffin. And yeah, I really liked this Scandinavia sequence of the movie. Like you get like these fights out on the water, and the water does look really freezing. Like you could like I had to like put my jacket back on because I was feeling like secondhand shivers, like as like the characters were shivering in that area.
Yeah, and then what was crazy is when the pack of wolves came out, and I was like, oh, this is just like the video game. Like she's out there in solitude. She doesn't want like too many people to. She doesn't want anybody to go with her because the more people that like track this thing down, the more chance they could like bring this information to the enemy. So she for the most part is trying to do this thing solo, and of course she's outnumbered with like 4 wolves that come up to her at her campfire there, and it's just like, oh crap, it's like these things look bloodthirsty. They get their drool dripping down their jaws, like, oh crap. And the way she manages to actually take them out was like, whoa, that is something from the damn game right there. Like just like she goes up, she like hangs off of a tree, like does one of those like flips off the tree to kind of confuse them, and in midair just like grabs her pistols and just starts firing. Like it was like, whoa, this acrobatic prowess that we see from the games is living right there, live action with Vikander. Great stuff right there. And it's a good, again, paying a homage to the video games, and nature is always a big part of the Tomb Raider games. Wildlife is always there, the dangerous wildlife, from the tigers to the leopards and stuff. So it was nice seeing that there.
And I was also really surprised by the twist that we find out, which is that Trinity has like been using this serum to kind of like taint some of the wildlife to make them more aggressive. So it makes them like even more of a challenge against Lara Croft. Like I heard some people say that felt like too tacked on, but I was just like really scared for Lara whenever she went up against these things, and so I guess it kind of worked for me.
Yeah, it was really interesting how the enemies, the wolves, were even a little bit more durable. Like they took several bullets to actually go down. It was like they were like hyped up on something. It was like Lara's like, what is exactly going on? Like normally this thing would go down in like 2 shots, and it's still there. And that's when it's even more like video gamey. Like in a game, in certain video games, like, oh yeah, that thing would be dead. But because it's a video game, it's like, oh, we got to make it more like a bullet sponge. It's got to take some more ammunition to go down.
Yeah, like this isn't easy mode. Like it feels very much like the difficulty level is high.
Yeah, but as she's going around there, this part freaking blew my mind. As she's going around this Scandinavian woods, she comes across like this shrine, and she has this kind of artifact device in her hand that she must have brought with her, I guess from someplace in England at her headquarters. That's where I got to give a little criticism to this, is because like we didn't really get any explanation of where she got this key from, because she used this key to insert it on the rock face and twisted it. It's like a circular type thing with like little raised edges that inserts to like perfectly fit, and you turn it counterclockwise, and like a door opens in the brick in the shrine, and she goes down, and she's looking through all this stuff, and that's where she, like, there's like lots of old paper. Like this thing looks like it's from like the Middle Ages, honestly. Like this thing definitely looks like the way that this is written. The artifacts that are down there, like different kind of goblets and chalices and things of that nature, definitely look like they could have been from the Crusades, I guess, in like the 1200s, 1100s, when they go out to the Middle East. So she's able to track that down. But I was like, Well, it would have been nice if, they would have actually explained where she got this key that just happened that she had, and it just opens up the door. But basically that leads her to the next location. But I mean, did you know where this key came from?
Okay, I'm so glad I'm not the only one who missed it. Yeah, so I guess maybe this is something they could have done a better thing explaining. Because as I was like watching her use this key, I was like, this feels a lot like the confusing stuff about the Sith dagger from the Rise of Skywalker. And, like I was kind of thinking of that movie, like watching this part. I think it's also because I remember when Daisy Ridley was rumored to be playing Lara Croft, but of course that didn't happen. But yeah, like it's kind of weird how this movie has non-linear storytelling, and yet they seem to have forgotten to go back and explain this key. Like I thought, like I wonder if like the editors missed that or something.
Yeah, I mean that's what you think. Like, there's lots of eyes on these properties. It's like, how does something like this that I think is quite big just slip through the cracks? But anyway, it was kind of funny though because uh, this thing is littered. This movie is littered with great Easter eggs from not only the Tomb Raider games, but some really good PlayStation games. And in one of these books, if she's flipping through the pages looking for clues for the next location that she can go to track this down, and no lie, it looked like there was one of the mascots from the old platformers for PlayStation, Crash Bandicoot. And I was like, just flipping through the pages. I'm like, oh wait a second, like go back because she flips through it real quick. Like if you don't know anything about Crash Bandicoot, like you would probably think it was just like some weird looking like orange animal from Australia or something like that. But it was like just like a blink and you miss a moment. I'm like, wow, they put that in there. Interesting.
Yeah, I had to like because I missed that in the theater. So like when I read up about it, I had to like Google the image of it, and someone was able to like find it. And yeah, it looks very much like Crash Bandicoot. Like I've never played the Crash games, but he's very recognizable. It's like, yeah, that's totally him.
It makes sense because Crash Bandicoot, it's a platformer, so you're running around. It actually came out around the same time as Tomb Raider did on the original PlayStation, I believe. Yeah, definitely. But he's running through a lot of ruins, a lot of jungles, stuff like that we'd see Lara Croft in. So like it made sense that they would pay homage. But even the design of Crash, like obviously he's very, very cartoony.
Yeah.
But I like how they actually tried hard to like make him look like he'd be in a live action manner. Like, and that's where I said like anybody would like blink and you miss it. But like I noticed like just from the fur, like the orange fur, like it didn't really look like anything like him at all. But since it was a video game movie, I'm like, yeah, that would have been Crash.
Yeah, like it definitely looks better than how Sonic looked in the like original trailer for that Sonic movie.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. Yeah. At least they got the feedback like, oh, we got to make this guy look better than Sonic. That's our mission, and I think they succeed.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she gets the information, and what did you think of the next location that she gets to go to track down this artifact?
So she finds like these notes from people who had been like trapped in this tomb, and like we come to find out that the orb had been taken from them a while ago, and so she comes to find out that like the people who took it from them they like travel around to different places in China. Like they're not from China, but they have their own like hidden headquarters there. And so Laura manages to like do some research and figure out like where their headquarters would be. And when she finds them, it's like it's basically like this other faction that she has to go up against. It's like kind of a three faction war. But I guess it's funny because with Trinity you have the three thing. But yeah, and like you get this really intense like shootout that happens, and like she really has to go through obstacles to get the orb from their clutches.
Yeah, yeah. So that was pretty cool because like I look for movies to have that big middle battle, like to make especially like action movies. Like you usually have that big opening scene, little pause, and this was like that middle area of that type of experience. So, but yeah, to see it all come together the way it did, like oh my gosh, like Trinity is actually like these three separate factions, and we know the whole time that she's try to do this on her own for the most part, and this is the part that just absolutely blew me away. This was the crossover of all crossovers because as she's in the middle of this firefight, there is another character that enters the fray. And this character also pays very, very big homage to the Indiana Jones series. And this is a Sony property character. And there he steps up, and it's none other than the character from Uncharted. Yeah, we have Nathan Drake showing up on the scene, and I was like, "Holy crap! I had no idea about this character showing up, and it makes perfect sense. Like, you got these properties that could actually meld together. They're both in that modern era of explorers going into tombs and finding artifacts. It's like, yeah, this I don't know where this falls in the canon of things with the games themselves, but like, hey, they're movies. They could be separate. Um, so that just blew my mind, and I just I was enjoying the fight, and then I seen him step up into the foreground, and my jaw just dropped. You know, like I don't play any of those games, but I know that there's a huge fan base. I'm like, oh crap, how did they hide this secret? You know, it's like the Luke Skywalker from the Mandalorian. Like, how did they hide him the whole time in the promotion? Like nothing got leaked, and it was like the same thing. Like, how the hell did Nathan Drake in a Tomb Raider movie not go unnoticed?
Yeah, it's pretty wild because the Uncharted movie came out only 2 weeks before this, and so like like they brought back Tom Holland, but they aged him in such a way where it looks convincing that he's an older Nathan Drake than like when he is in the Uncharted movie, which takes place in the early 90s. And so maybe this is why we get moments where the green screen doesn't look so good. Maybe the whole budget went into the CGI to make Nathan Drake, to make Tom Holland look a bit older. And I'm glad to say in this instance that it does look convincing to me. Like, I don't know if it's a combination of CGI and really good makeup or what, but it's like he looks more like the Nathan Drake of the games, but you can still tell that it's like Tom Holland. And so it's kind of like a nice middle ground for fans of both the movie and the games, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of cool because at one point, you know, Nathan just runs out of ammunition. And again, this movie runs into a lot of plot holes and a lot of weird things. I'm like, how the hell did he end up with a whip all of a sudden? Like he just it's just on the ground, and he goes and he picks this thing up, and all of a sudden he's an expert at slinging his whip, like as if he's been using it for 30 years, you know? So I was like, okay, like I think you guys went a little bit too far with making homages to Indiana Jones. Like I get it, like it's an inspiration, but like come on, like you're literally just like making Indiana Jones look bad at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild because you have like these different studios putting these two characters together, and then on top of that you have like the Indiana Jones homage. Which, speaking of which, like I don't know if you've like saw the teaser a little while back, but Bethesda is making an Indiana Jones video game.
Oh, I'm so excited about that because I've actually never really played an Indiana Jones game unless you count the Lego Indiana Jones game, which is fine. But oh yeah, I'm ready for that. And there's a really good developer named Machine Games who already does a lot of work with like World War II games. They make the Wolfenstein games, which are just freaking fantastic, but they're also shooters. So obviously they're gonna have to change their genre. And we have seen cases where that's happened a lot. Like Jedi Fallen Order, their developer was a shooter, first person shooter developer, Respawn, and now we're gonna get and we see how good they were with Jedi Fallen Order. So yeah, I'm super excited about Indiana Jones game. I'm very excited to see how that whip combat is gonna go, and if it's as good as what we've seen here with Nathan Drake wielding the whip.
Yeah, like I love Elder Scrolls, and like Skyrim is going to turn 10 later this year, and that game I feel has probably aged pretty well. So like imagine what they could do with an Indiana Jones game now with like that type of like company working on it.
But yeah, they find what these guys were gonna do, and they were going to set off this bomb to kind of open up a hole in this specific area, but the people were doing it in the wrong way because there was a lot of civilians actually in this area. So this bomb, which is the only way that supposedly they can get down there. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't think you needed a bomb to get in there, but they didn't care about collateral damage, and I don't think they had the time to worry about intricately like getting in there without causing any damage. So they're just like, screw it. We know that Lara Croft is after the same thing. We're gonna set this bomb, and if it kills a couple hundred people, oh well, because ultimately all we care about is this freaking orb of eternal energy. So that was the mission, is like they had to get in there. Lara Croft and Nathan Drake, like, first off, their interaction, it was priceless. Like they both look at each other and like, why are you here? And like, why are you here? You know, it was like one of those things. Like, and they would have probably tried to kill one another, but they knew that there was a common goal, and they knew that it wouldn't have been right for these people, the Trinity, to set off this bomb. So that was their common goal. And well, they were able to fend off all these guys and of course get to the bomb in time to defuse it. So they get to that antechamber. They're able to break into there, and they find a gem, and the gem is able to direct them to that very location that we opened up with, which ends up being the end of the movie, surprisingly. So
yeah, basically comes full circle.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, so we had the gem, which had somehow the gem had inscribed inside the surface of the gem. Somehow it had coordinates, of course. So when they were able to find that out, they got on the plane, and basically they had to do separate ways of going in. So that's why we didn't see Nathan Drake, because he was actually riding on a camel to get there. Because like this was in the middle of the desert, and really the only way, they couldn't even take any kind of vehicles because they would sink in the sand. So he had to take that, and she took the airplane. And well, we've seen how well that went, because the whole time, of course, this whole story is you have the Trinity, as we were saying, going on and trying to beat them to there. So it's like a game of cat and mouse, this entire movie. So she gets down to the ground, and she is able to meet him there. I'm not exactly sure why he just didn't go into plane with her. Like, were they seriously like trying to cut him out purposely so he would have an appearance like that was an epic Captain America, like coming in the Infinity War entrance type of thing? Like, was all that just for that? Like, again, some of these decisions were just like, I don't know what's going on here.
I also kind of wonder if maybe they were limited on how much screen time they could give Nathan Drake. So it's like, I mean, it kind of feels like that Spider-Man situation a little bit, but yeah, like there are these things in the movie where it's like, well, couldn't you have gone together? Like, why does it have to be done in this way?
Yeah, it's like, okay, we know where all the budget went. We gotta save on 10 minutes of not having him in there. That'll save us like $50 million. So we need that. We need that to market this movie or whatever we're gonna do with it. But yeah, so they're in the oasis in the desert. They're getting very close to this orb of eternal energy. They have everything they need, and that is when we have a little bit of a fight between Nathan Drake, Lara Croft. They lash out at one another, and then we get into this epic duel between Nathan Drake and Lara Croft, which is probably something that has lived in the fans' imaginations for years. So it just gets really heavy, because the whole time, you think that Trinity is the ultimate enemy. But it turns out that in fact Nathan Drake is the ultimate antagonist to Lara Croft, and it's like, wow, the fact that they kept all this out of the marketing is pretty amazing.
It kind of feels like that Captain America Civil War type of thing where like they think that it's cool to see them fight each other, but you know that they can't like kill each other because like basically you just end both characters who are like really bringing in all the money for like these properties. So they like during the fight, like I know that some people in my theater were excited to see them like fight it out, but I was kind of like, what's the point of this? Like I know that neither one is gonna die. They're basically just padding the runtime now, and it's like that fight just went on way too long, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of obvious examples throughout Hollywood about, hey, that fight just drags on and on and on. X-Men Apocalypse.
Oh, I actually thought that the fight in that one was well paced, but that's me.
Well, I just remember the bubble and everything else going on. I was like, okay, let's get this over with. But you know what I mean. So like
Yeah.
this one of the ones that it just drags on and on and on. It's like, oh, it's like they're about to overtake the other person. Now they're gonna overtake the other person. Now they're gonna overtake, and it just seemed like the stakes just went down minute after minute. Like, okay, like I'm just sitting there in the theater, just let's get this over with. Like, how is this gonna resolve? Because this is just running too long. But then they had another conundrum they had to deal with.
Yeah, they have to deal with like this weapon that Trinity has created, which they call a slinky. And you know, it looks like those coils that you would find on like a slinky dog, but it's like a giant version of the coil. And like as it spins, it creates this like type of like it basically fires up this laser that like they're able to like fire at them. And so Laura and Nathan are in a lot more trouble going up against this, but thankfully Laura with the unlimited ammo like is able to like fight them with confidence. And there's even a moment where she and Nathan like hold the orb together and she like shares one of her pistols with him, so like they're basically like connected like through the orb and like firing in unison, like as they run together and try to like dodge all the bullets together.
Oh yeah, and at that point they have that like really good slow motion shot.
Yeah.
Like all this carnage going, and they're like literally like leaping like through the air, like doing a classic like Matrix type of move while that's all happening. So I was like, okay, I gotta give it to him. That looked pretty awesome.
Yeah, like there were people in my theater clapping when they saw like how heroic they were being like in this moment. Like it was such a fan service moment, but like it works. It gets people excited. It's kind of like in Avengers type of moment, like seeing these iconic characters come together. And like in this instance, like we weren't expecting it. Like it was like they really had us like with this crossover.
Yeah, yeah.
It was kind of silly that they realized that they could break the orb in half, and like so like each of them could like keep a part of it safe against like the shady corporations or whatever. And because like if you have the orb together in one place, then like someone could like get it and just use it automatically. And so they ultimately decide that it would be safer to divide it. And like they don't realize earlier in the movie that it can be separated in halves because like it only happens during this final fight when they're like grabbing onto it, trying to pull it towards themselves, and they like pull it apart. Like it's very much like Rey and Kylo Ren with the lightsaber, and then they're like, oh wait, it's in halves, and they like put it back together and see that it glows and it works again. And so they're basically like, we should each keep our half of it safe in our own locations. And like as a show of goodwill, they like let each other know where their respective like home bases are, because they know that if anything happens and they need help with like anything else, they can just like come to each other for help if need be. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I had mixed feelings about that. Like I was like, really, this is the solution that the movie comes to?
Yeah, it was really cheap, honestly. It's like, come on, guys. Like, you gotta be a little bit more deliberate with the choice here. It just feels like, all right, we know that but everybody loves both of these characters, so we're gonna let them both off the hook. There's not gonna be any repercussions, nothing that's gonna leave the audience with like, ooh or ah, like none of these characters were left maimed, not like missing an arm or anything that would like challenge them or anything like that, you know?
I kind of feel like Laura's story kind of gets lost because the whole Nathan Drake thing kind of overshadows her a
Yeah.
bit, and because we have like this interesting stuff going on between Laura and Anna Miller. Like Anna like used to date her dad, and so that causes like some tension as like they fight each other, and it's like um there's like this whole thing of like could things be different or not, and then that whole thing gets lost of like as Nathan Drake comes into the picture, like as cool as it was, but like yeah, it's yeah, I have mixed feelings about like some of the directions in this movie.
Yeah. And I mean, the way that it's left leads you to believe that probably eventually they're gonna have to find one another if they both know where they are. So it's like, okay, well, hopefully the next time, uh, the story is told from a way that's able to, like you said, make Lara Croft not get overshadowed by Nathan Drake, because you worry about that a lot with a lot of these ensemble movies. Like, oh, somebody's gonna clearly be the one that takes over, and with only one of her story, like only having her in one story, that was focused on her before this, it's like the second movie, there's still a lot more development on her end that needs to happen, and this is what happens. So we really don't get that here.
Yeah, so the movie kind of ends on a bit of a whimper. Although I did think it was funny when the post-credit scene echoed the post-credit scene of Uncharted, where like in this instance the kids from the Jumanji sequels are playing the like Tomb Raider on like the PlayStation 5 or whatever, and it's like you see Vikander and like her live action face becomes like video game CGI, and it zooms out and shows them playing that game. And so like it makes me wonder, like, is there gonna be a three-way crossover? How's that gonna work?
I mean, again, like the settings at least match up. It's like freaking, I don't know, Star Trek or something. At least the
Right.
thematic resonance of it actually makes sense. Like they're all dealing with like tombs and ancient relics and ruins and whatnot. So
Yeah, and jungles and stuff.
yeah, but overall, I mean, getting into the scores and all, it's just like I really like the first one a lot more. I think there was a lot of cool potential, like we were talking about earlier in the episode about what we see at the end of the first movie. It was like, oh, she gets the two guns, and then I think this one I mentioned a little bit just goes way too far with the Easter eggs, goes way too far with calling back to things like Indiana Jones, and has plot holes where she gets keys to open up certain things that we don't even know how she got them or why she even knows that they belong where they need to go. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, I gotta give this like a 5 Lara Croft braids out of 10. Like I said before, the first one it was like a 7 or 7.5, and you always hope that the sequel can outdo the first one, obviously. And most of the time, that doesn't happen. In this case, it's far lower than the original, because it just seems like there's just natural movie making blunders that happen in here. The CGI, like they spent too much time on Nathan Drake, and that's to make Tom Holland look like he's older. It's just like that wasn't really necessary. And I mean, I don't know what to say about the future for this franchise. I mean, I feel like me and you kind of score things pretty pretty okay as far as like we're usually in the middle of the road for a lot of things, and we're level headed in our critiques and whatnot. And if we're saying, at least from, I haven't heard your score yet, but if I'm at least saying this is like a 5 out of 10, it's like, oh man, the critical rating for this thing is going to go down real low, and no one's going to really see this thing if they see how bad the score is, or what the bad word of mouth is on this thing. So do they leave it off with something that could happen next? Yeah, but will the studio have the money and the budget to follow through? That could be decided.
Yeah, I do think this is more of a middle of the road type of movie. Admittedly, I really enjoyed some of the like fan servicey parts, and when I say fan service in this context, I mean like the Nathan Drake team up thing. But I do like we've said, I do think it detracts from Lara Croft's story. Like even if it is cool and ambitious to have them cross over, like maybe this was too early in her series for this type of thing to happen. It's kind of like it kind of feels like they're trying to rush toward something big because they don't know how long people are going to be invested or how successful these movies will be. So they kind of have to like dangle this little hint of like, hey, if you keep watching, we'll do this thing you think might be pretty cool. So yeah, Tomb Raider 2 has some plot holes. It does have some fun moments, like some thrilling moments, and like the unlimited ammo thing was pretty funny, although it does like kind of break the immersion a bit with like the first movie felt more grounded and I really enjoyed that. So I think I'm gonna give Tomb Raider 2 a 6 out of 10 pistols.
It's not the worst video game movie. I think I'll still say that Assassin's Creed was still the worst one. I think I gave that like a 3 out of 10. That one just, I did not enjoy that movie. That was,
Okay. Yeah, I've been meaning to see that, but I just haven't gone around to it.
Yeah, it's more of a chore for me to watch that movie than anything. I was like, they should have paid me to watch that movie, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've only played most of the first Assassin's Creed game, but as I got closer to the end, I got to this mission that was really hard for me to figure out and to beat, so I like never finished it. But like it looks like the gameplay in the second one improved. Like you could throw coins and people would like jump to them. So it does look like a really cool franchise, and it's a shame if like the movie didn't live up to that.
Yeah, I actually am playing through Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is the one that's based in Greece. And you're right, like as the game series goes, it gets more and more improved. Now, yeah, the second one was like a lot of people's favorites because, like you said, they enhanced so much. It's still kind of like number one, but it's not as limited. There's bigger open areas, but now the game's like a full-fledged like open world RPG. There's like character relationships and decisions and romancing characters and all that kind of fun stuff you'd expect out of a game like Mass Effect or Fallout or Skyrim, stuff like that. But yeah, love that series, and I do know that they're making or they're working on a Netflix series, I believe. Did you hear that or something? I thought.
Oh no, I haven't. Is it live action or animated?
I think it could be live action actually.
Yeah, I'm just looking this up real quick.
Because I was like, guys, didn't you learn the first time you made this movie that completely sucked?
Okay, it's live action.
Oh no.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know, because I mean, I know again, I still haven't watched The Witcher yet, but I will soon. I know it's not based on the video games; it's based on like the
book,
the books or whatever. But I mean, if something like that's more medieval looking can be successful on Netflix, and hopefully they can use some of that magic for that. But on the other hand, maybe it also could have worked if like there were an Assassin's Creed animated series or anime or something. So hopefully they do it justice.
Yeah. Netflix is on a roll with their video game properties. Like it seemed like maybe like a month ago, every other week they were greenlighting something. I know they have a Witcher animated movie or coming out. They have a freaking Dota, which is like a big competitive MOBA game that's getting a series. They're having a Resident Evil series. They're having, Castlevania's been on there. They're having so many different series. Like they're after the success for The Witcher, they're like, oh, we're leaning all in on the video game content.
Yeah, I recently caught up with Castlevania, so yeah, I really love the animation style. The third season felt more like a setup season, but a friend told me to expect that, so I knew that going in.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you make a good point. We're seeing like video games being adapted into TV series now, and like there's supposed to be a Last of Us series with Pedro Pascal, right?
Oh yeah, and actually the
Like
Ellie
HBO.
and Ellie or whoever is actually played by the one Mormont girl from Game of Thrones.
I've only read the first book and watched the first episode.
Yeah, long story short, people, of course, it's the internet. People aren't happy for various reasons. But I'm open to it. I'm open. I'll be looking forward to watching that because, from my perspective, I don't know what happens in the game. So hey, I'd be experiencing it as just a normal TV show, not having any baggage comparing it to a video game.
Yeah, like it could be a gateway for people not familiar with the franchise, and hey, maybe the TV show will make them want to play the games. So, it could work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could work.
Yeah. But I guess with that, we can go ahead and close off this episode. Thanks for joining me again, Starrapter. Where can people find your stuff?
Oh yeah, thanks a lot for having me back on here, Steven. It's always a fun time to reminisce about these movies that we've seen and enjoyed in the theater in person. So you can find my content on YouTube at youtube.com/Starrapter. I mainly do Star Wars content. I'll check out the comic books that come out on a weekly basis when they do come out, and I'll do the occasional book review as well as, hey, I've been doing more reviews for movies lately, like the Snyder Cut. So, and we got Black Widow. That was a really fun movie. Seeing that about a year ago. So I keep thinking about that one over and over again. But we got plenty of movies on the horizon, so you can look forward to all that content coming out there. And you can follow me on Twitter as well. That's where I'm most active on social media, and that's Starrapter.
Nice. Yeah, go ahead and check that out, listeners. As for my plugs, you can find me at Steven Schinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can find my fantasy horror comedy novel, Lemons Will Like Rain. It's available on Amazon. You can check out more info at stevenschinder.com. If you want to email this podcast, you can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. And your thoughts will be read if you want, whether they be about movies or video games or what. And you can also hear me on the Star Trek Culture podcast, which you can find on the Culture Slate YouTube channel. It's been on a break lately, but you can find all the episodes of that there. And I was also recently on an episode of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition where Ben and I talked about some superhero related news, and then we did top 5 clip show episodes, which was fun, and then talked about stuff like the Snyder Cut. Like he hadn't watched all of it by then. I gave him like a spoiler-free impression of it, and we talked a bit about Superman and Lois. So yeah, it was a fun episode. I'll link all of these in the show notes, and think that's everything. And next episode will be on Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway. I know that one's been out for a year in this universe anyway, but Easter weekend is coming up, so it might be a thing to talk about. But without further delay, have a good day.